Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Cookiecast. Today on Cookiecast, it's the stats mistress herself, back with a bang, late to the party as always, but hey, that's not a problem for you guys because you still get it at the same time. There's going to be, running, TV, movies, stuff that's been going on, things like that. Sounds good? Yeah. There is a video, so, jump over to YouTube while you're there, subscribe, like, comment, click for notifications, hold someone at gunpoint, get them to do the same. Maybe a few people. I don't know. Cool. So here we go. This is Cookiecast, up Liante.
Start recording. Hello there, podcast people. Camera coming. Give me a second. We are recording. Let me be seated. Everybody get comfortable. Microphone in position. Oh, microphone feels higher than normal. Hi. Welcome to another podcast, another episode of Up Liante. I think this is number 6 now. In fact, I've written it down. It is number 6. I don't know why I say I think. I know these things. It is middle of the day today. So last podcast was a week last Tuesday. So it's been a week and a half, 10 days since I did my podcast. For various reasons this week I wasn't able to do it on Tuesday. I was working. I had to work Tuesday evening, and then various events. Wednesday evening I had a weekly check-in with my friends. There's Haz, Claire, Sky, Zoe. Hello everybody. We had a check-in this week. In fact, Claire couldn't make it. She is having some troubles getting her little boy to sleep, so she didn't join us, but we did week 2 of the virtual pub quiz. I don't know the name of the guy, but he's the guy that set up a little quiz, I think, for his friends and family at the start of the lockdown, and it got onto Facebook, and then loads of people ended up tuning in, so he's ended up doing it to like hundreds of thousands of people and kept it going each week. So it's not something we've done regularly. We did week 1 over 2 weeks, I think it was, and then we did the second week last week. A bit fun, a bit of light entertainment. I was rubbish. I'm pretty sure I came last out of the group. Something like 18 out of 50 questions. There was a really difficult round, actually, a music round, where he just read out the lyrics, and it is so hard when you are just having a series of music song lyrics read to you to actually be able to place them, and I just couldn't do it on so many of them. They sound familiar, but without getting that tune in place you can't remember what the song is, so I really struggled on that round. I think I only got something like 3 out of 10. In fact, I might have only actually answered 3 out of 10 questions. I'm not sure that they were all necessarily right. Sorry, having a drink. I did have a drink before we started. I feel very dry already. So anyway, yeah, we did a quiz on Wednesday. Thursday night I go shopping. Friday night, Cookie already had a different podcast to do, so it's Saturday daytime today. I was expecting the baby to be having a nap so I can get the podcast done, but she's woken up in like a third of the time that she usually takes to have a nap, so she's gone off downstairs and I've had to stay, not had to, but I've stayed to do my podcast just to get it done. Otherwise we're running into next week, and then I've gone from starting it weekly, and it'll end up being fortnightly. So although it'll only be a week at the point in time this is uploaded and you guys see or listen to this, it's been 10 days since I last recorded. We're in week 10 of lockdown now, so we've had just over a week of the rules having been relaxed slightly, so that you can exercise more than once a day, and you can go out and you can see one other person from another household as long as you maintain social distancing. So I have taken advantage of that. I've seen my mum a couple of times. We've been for a walk. There's a route, and it's one of the routes where I run up near the sports village, and there's a bus route that isn't used at the moment, so it's very wide. It's easy to maintain the social distancing whilst you're walking in parallel and able to hold a conversation. We've also seen my dad. I saw him last Saturday. He came across, brought us a flask of coffee, and we sat on a bench in the park and just sat and had a bit of a catch up and drink, which was nice to do. He just sort of, it's hard when you haven't seen somebody for so long, and then you're given that opportunity to catch up. And it was quite, I don't know, it's difficult when you first see them, because you think, oh, I'll give you a hug, and obviously you can't do that. And he was thinking, and obviously just wants to pick her up and give her a cuddle, and can't do that. It's bizarre sort of coming back into contact with people after all this time, but really nice just to see my dad and have a bit of a chat. Also got arrangements to meet my stepdad on Monday, go for a walk with him as well, assuming that the weather holds. It is incredibly blustery. I've had to just shut the window, although it's been quite warm. So we've had the windows open because it's been quite warm, and it's quite warm in here, but because it's so blustery outside, I've had to shut the window so that it doesn't interfere with the sound of this recording. I wouldn't want you to not be able to hear me in my scintillating conversation. So that's where we are at the point in time. Runs. So it's not been a good time. I have been doing what I set out to do, which was sort of run more regularly, but do shorter distance. So since I last spoke, so I'm saying it's 10 days, I've only done 4 runs. Last week, so after I did the podcast last week, I went out on Thursday, Friday, didn't go Saturday or Sunday or Monday, and then went Tuesday and Thursday. So that's my 4. So it's not very good at all, really. I feel a little bit like I've lost the momentum with running. It's the other exercise. So the other exercise I'm finding is having more benefits. So I'm doing Joe Wicks every day apart from Wednesdays. So from the last podcast, I'll have done Joe Wicks on the Thursday, Friday, and then this last week I'll have done Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm feeling the benefits from that. I'm feeling stronger. I can keep up with the rhythm more. I'm finding sort of squats a lot easier. Before, I would probably do a squat at like half the pace at which he can do, just because my knees are so creaky and I just can't lower myself as quickly as he can and then stand back up. Whereas now I feel like I'm able to keep a little bit more time. I'm feeling that strength building, feeling the strength in my arms. I'm able to do more press-ups without stopping. There's just small differences that you can notice along the way. Whereas the running, it's just an ongoing struggle, and it's not getting easier. I'm not getting better, and I'm not seeking to set out a new plan this week. I will continue with this approach. Some of my distances have been, I'd set out to do sort of a mile daily, or depending on how I felt, and when I look back at what I've done, I did a 1.2, a 1.4, a 1.2 and a 1. So they're up and down in terms of how far I can cover, but I'm not digging it at the moment. There must be other people out there that have this same sort of struggle in terms of trying to get back into running. Maybe I need to hear from you, hear your stories. What's motivating you and keeping you going? The weight loss should be motivating me, but I've had to actually tackle my diet in order to try and start tackling the weight loss, because the running's not doing it. The running would do it if I wasn't eating like a giant, turning myself into a giant, but I'm just not finding that balance at the moment. So I will continue on the path I've set out. I will continue to run regularly. What I think I need is to be able to go running with somebody else, somebody that can run, but so that we can stop, have a bit of a break, a quick walk, and then go back to running. I feel like I need that interaction maybe as the distraction, or just so there's a little bit more enjoyment from the actual running. But I will continue on the path. I'll try to keep going regularly. Should be going tomorrow, and then in theory it should be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We'll see how that pans out and whether I fit them all in. Some days are just tricky. If the baby doesn't sort of settle down and go off to sleep when she should, is that the reason? Or sometimes I'm just exhausted and I end up having a sleep instead of going for a run. I'm sure there's others out there that do that too. But when I look back at, I've got my little list of what I've done. The first day, on Thursday, I went out and I felt quite comfortable. I set off to go in a particular direction around the block, but I got halfway or so far and I found the road that I needed to run down was closed, so I just turned back on myself. And I'd been struggling up to that point, but as soon as I turned round and started running back the direction I'd come, it felt a lot more comfortable, a lot easier, and I don't know if that's just because I knew that I was on my way back home at that point, and I only had as far to run as I'd already done. There's some sort of mental it made it seem easier rather than heading off still what seems like away from home before turning back. I don't know. Then I took the route that I just mentioned around the university, the bus route. That was 1.4 miles. That was a nice day. The sun was warm, so I'd just gone out in sort of a t-shirt without a jacket, so I wasn't overly hot. There was a cool breeze, so that was quite refreshing against the heat, but it wasn't too windy to be able to breathe, and it was just pleasant. You didn't feel like you were running into a wind either, so that was just a nice run that day, and so probably why I did a little bit more than I would normally. The third run was a 1.2 mile route, and that was really windy, and it was after I'd not run Saturday, Sunday or Monday, so a 3-day break. I set out thinking this is going to be really good. I've had plenty of time to rest. I should be able to do well, and it was just awful. The wind was against me all the way and I just couldn't catch a breath and I couldn't breathe. So I just struggled with it. So I had to stop very briefly at about 3/4 of a mile just to catch my breath, and then I managed to run back and do the 1.2 miles. So just a real up and down. Oh, and then the final one was just a mile, and I just ran round our estate, and I got to a point where I was almost able to turn back home. There's obviously various routes around the estate. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, another drink. Various routes that I can take to get back home. And I was coming up to a road that turned in at home, and I thought I'll stop here and I'll just do a short walk back to the house. And when I looked, I'd done exactly a mile, and I thought, my God, I thought I'd done more than that, to be fair, but I hadn't, and I just left it at that. Having said that, it's not been a great sort of time with running. The leg pains are shifting. They're not the issue at the moment. It's more breathing and the weather. So maybe my leg pains are starting to go away. Nothing stands out from the runs as being horrendous in terms of my legs, and I would have written it down if that had been the case. So maybe that is getting better, and maybe the Joe Wicks and the yoga. I've been doing the yoga every day, just sort of building up on those moves, developing my strength across my chest in doing sort of, you go from a high push-up position to lowering yourself down in a very narrow press up. You've got to keep your elbows into your body and lower yourself down, so that's building up my strength across here. But maybe, obviously I don't think that has anything to do with my strength when running, but the other yoga moves will be building that. So maybe that is all helping, and I just need to keep on at it and keep going, which I will do, and we'll see where we get to. I want to come back at some point and have a positive story. I felt like we were on a positive path at the beginning. I was doing those longer distances, but it just didn't feel right. It wasn't comfortable, so I knew I needed to change things to get to a more comfortable position with it. So we'll see where we get to after another week or so. I think my next podcast will be on Wednesday, so I won't have an awful lot to say in that short time. So we'll have to see what happens. What else is on here? I've gone through Joe Wicks, gone through yoga, mentioned the diet briefly. So need to adapt the diet, remove all the chocolate from it. Eating sort of half a sharing bar a night is probably not the answer when you're trying to lose weight. I think throughout the lockdown I've been in a position where I wasn't putting weight on, so although the exercise I was doing wasn't shifting any weight, I didn't feel that I needed to change anything. But just over the last couple of weeks, the weight has been creeping back on. So now is time to address that, stop that from happening, and start going back the other way. I needed to lose that extra post-baby weight and allow myself to keep eating chocolate, copious amounts of chocolate, not just sort of a quick treat after my tea. It was excessive, so trying to rein all that back in and see where we get to. The exercise obviously helps, and a walk with the baby, not every day, as I've said before, but at least every other day. And I started measuring them this week just to see how far those walks were, and they're sort of 2 to 2.5 miles, so that's on top of a day where I might have done Joe Wicks and I've done a short run, and then I then go and do a walk. So all of this has got to help in terms of weight loss if I just rein the diet in. There's no, it can't not, so we'll see where we get to. I'll keep you posted. TV and films are a little bit lacking this week, so we've only watched one film. Cookie and I watched this one together, and it's called 12 Strong on Netflix, I think. It's a film starring Chris Hemsworth from, Thor from Marvel Universe and other things. A film we watched a couple of weeks ago, Extraction. This is a film set just after the Twin Tower attacks in New York, in the Pentagon, and was there another flight attack? It's the response from the US military to try and find the culprits of the terrorism, I suppose. So they're sent into Afghanistan to try and track the... Is it Afghanistan? I can't remember. It was a week ago that we watched it. But they are sent in. There's just 12 guys sent in, and they're basically trying to shut down the terrorist unit. I'm trying to think of the name and I can't. I'm just having a complete mind blank. And it was about their survival, really, how these 12 guys managed to make such a difference. Some of them had promised their wives they'd be home by Christmas, and I think this started sort of late October, their mission. But to do with the weather system they were entering, the snow would come and cover the mountains. They only had 3 weeks to complete what they were trying to achieve. Apparently it's bad luck to say that you'll be home by a certain date, because inevitably they might die. So it was that was the premise of the film. Admittedly, I fell asleep. It was a difficult film to watch. The terrain and the scenery was very much the same. They were sort of in a rocky desert sort of areas. Not a lot going on apart from a lot of gunfire, and there was lots of snippets of the film that there was conversations going backwards and forwards in other languages, and it didn't have subtitles. So I worked on the basis it was trying to give you a feeling of how these military guys actually felt, not necessarily understanding all the language or what was being said around them. But it made for a slightly strange film that I ended up clearly just zoning out on and fell asleep. So I think I missed probably half an hour or so of it towards the back end. So certainly from my perspective, it's not a very highly rated film. There was nothing wrong with the content per se. It was probably just it was probably just me. I wasn't enjoying it, and it was later on in the evening, so I had a little snooze instead. Why not? The other thing I will just mention is that it had the guy in from Ant-Man, the Ant-Man films, the funny guy that sort of does the over-voicing and he talks really fast, and it was just a strange concept to see him in quite a serious role as a military sort of soldier. essentially, sort of a serious role. It didn't quite fit. It was strange casting, and obviously he doesn't want to be typecast as being a funny guy for everything he does, but it just didn't quite work. So that was 12 strong. I guess on my rating scale it's probably only a 5.5, 6 for me, but on the basis that I haven't seen it all and probably should watch it again, fill in those gaps to be able to rate it. Don't take my word on anything. Watch it for yourselves and see what you think. TV. So I've been watching more of Gangs of London. That has ramped up. I've enjoyed the last few episodes. So there's a couple of meaty, sort of good episodes in terms of the storyline. There was an episode where main character was being targeted, sort of he ended up in a bit of a shootout with a sniper in an alleyway. Someone was trying to pick him off, and that was quite good. I'm just thinking whether I'm giving anything away. I suppose you're either watching it or you're not. That sort of pans out. I won't say too much more in case you do plan to watch it. That was a good episode, and then the episode that followed that focused on the young lad, the young gypsy lad that had killed the head of the family in the very first episode, and he'd sort of been squirreled away in a secret location, and it was the fact that some people, who you don't necessarily know who they are at the moment or why, who sent them, have sort of tracked down his location and how things follow through from there. And that was quite an eventful episode, fairly action packed. So I enjoyed that one, and it's probably the episode that I've enjoyed most so far. And then I've watched another one since then, where a woman who was in the episode where they were trying to kill Sean. She's been sort of taken hostage and is being tortured for information, and that got pretty brutal. There was a particular snippet that I couldn't watch. I sort of needed to turn away from and watch through, sort of corner of an eye. She was sort of strung up by a wrist, with a wrist over her head, over broken glass and bare feet, and she was being lowered down so all the glass would cut her feet open. But she managed to get hold of a piece of this glass at some point when she wasn't being watched, and what it seemed happened, as I say, I was sort of watching through the corner of my eye and blurred vision. It seemed that she cut her wrist that had the handcuff around. She cut her wrist to seemingly sort of be able to slide the handcuff up over her wrist. I don't know, it seemed to be pulling the skin back on the hand, and it was a little bit too much. It was just, I think sort of violence and gore in these programs is important. That's what draws people in, sort of almost the reality of the situation, that these things actually go on somewhere. But the lengths that people go to try and get out of a situation, it was just, it was pretty intense. So I wasn't watching that closely. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but her plan did have merits by the end, because she managed to slip out of this handcuff. I won't go into what happened thereafter and whether it was worth it or not, but yeah, the episodes have certainly ramped up, definitely more interesting now. I started watching another one last night, but I only watched about half an hour, 20 minutes of it or something. So I'll save that for another evening this week. But I think I'm getting towards the back end. I must be on episode 7 or so by now, I think. So yes, that's getting big thumbs up at the moment. The other thing I started watching on Cookie's recommendation was The Mandalorian. Don't know if I'd mentioned that last week. I may have already started it, but that's been very good. So these are fairly, not short, but they are sort of 35-minute episodes, and it focuses on a bounty hunter race, the Mandalorians. There's sort of one character called Mando, and the jobs he's picking up, sort of doing bounty hunts and returning people. It is set, I can't remember when Cookie told me it was set, but it's sort of after the events of the original Star Wars movies. So the first 3 Star Wars movies is sort of at the end of that in time order. So one of the first bounties the Mandalorian has to collect is a little baby, and it is what appears to be a baby Yoda. And I'd heard a lot of hype, people going crazy about the baby Yoda, and I'm not sure what the concept here is. It's either a sort of clone of Yoda, because of the time it's set, Yoda is already dead. I'm not sure that it would necessarily be a child of Yoda. Why not? But it's a little baby green Yoda, very entertaining. So it doesn't do what he's told, plays with things that he shouldn't, and he's sort of the highlight of the show. Sorry, that was drink time again. So I've watched 4 or 5 episodes of that. It is each episode sort of a standalone. It focuses on a storyline within that episode, but essentially they all hang together. Last episode that I watched, he was sort of summoned to help a village out that needed protection against ATST walker. Is that the right one? One of the little ones on 2 legs, not the big ones on 4 legs. So it's a sort of bog standard show where you've got a main character that is helping other people. He's sort of the person that everybody turns to within that episode to help get to the end. And then they're quite short episodes, and I can't say the storyline's like it's not original. It is original in terms of it being related to Star Wars, but the actual stories for each episode, they're not particularly original. You've seen them before in your other shows. It's very reminiscent of sort of Firefly, but Star Wars. So yeah, it's enjoyable, it's easy watching, the episodes aren't too long, and they're not overly taxing on the brain, so it's probably what I needed to balance against Gangs of London, because one is very intense and one is just easy to go. So enjoying both of those. That's about it really in terms of TV and films. Not a lot else going on over the last 10 days. I feel like I've just not had much brain capacity to tune into much. I've not really played any game. Can't remember the last time I played any games, so I need to sort of reset and get myself back on track really. Get myself back in the zone, back on the movies. Haven't watched Gone in 60 Seconds. Had the opportunity to watch it last night while Cookie was doing the podcast. Decided not to and just sat and watched TV and sort of zoned out. That's my problem. I feel like I've lost a bit of focus, so just need to get that back and get some content back for the podcast. What else is in there? So other things, getting to the back end now of my list. So we had Cards Against Humanity night a week last Friday for Haz's birthday. Shout out to Haz, a bit late now. I did mention you in the last one, saying that I was going to drop off your presents, which I did last Thursday night after I've been shopping. I feel like I've spoken about that. Have I? But anyway, we played Cards Against Humanity for your birthday last Friday night. So we'd agreed to start at 8 o'clock, and I went to set up the site with our private game, to share the link with everybody. Went to go on the site, and it said Cards Against Humanity, or whatever it is that they call it, had been removed, and it was just like, oh no, what are we going to play now? And it was really disappointing for a few minutes, so I was doing a quick Google search, and I managed to find that there was another site, one that I'd not seen before when I'd previously been looking at what the options were for playing it. I think this one's called Bad Cards, and it has access to all of the, I don't know how many of the add-on packs, but we experienced a lot of them in the actual game. The gameplay for playing online is different to what we've been used to, so we'd had to manually move a lot of the cards around, all of the cards around, when we were playing on the original site, and it was sort of always a running joke that Mike never knew when his turn was, or which cars to be moving or turning over at which point in time. So we'd always be there sort of like, Mike, it's you, come on. So this new site is all automated, so the screen would tell you when it's your go. You don't have to move any cards. It brings all the other players' sort of submissions for their white cards. It brings them to you on your screen. So it's all sort of self-functioning, really. So Mike was, I think, quite happy with the new site. Minimised his sort of effort required and needing to pay attention. Minimised our effort in terms of having to remind him. Did remove the ongoing joke of the sort of necessity of what he needed to do, but I think he was quite keen on the new page. It worked quite well, and it was nice to have a different variety of cards, so that really worked. It felt like it wasn't as funny for some reason. I'm not sure if it's getting a bit tired. We've played it sort of maybe 4 times now since lockdown started, so maybe it's just getting a bit old. We're not as humorous, but we're due to play again on Sunday night. But has actually messaged us yesterday suggesting, or just mentioning that she'd been recommended this other game, which I think was called Psych. Not sure how we play it, if we need to go onto a website or download an app, but it seemed to be you get a card you post with a question, and I think all the players have to generate, like, you make up your own answer. You throw those in with a real answer, I assume, and everyone has to select which one they think is the true answer. I think this game has existed before, maybe with other names. So I think there's a potential we're giving that a go on Sunday evening. There is concern that it requires actual brain power to be able to come up with your own made-up responses. So I think we're all a little bit wary, Sky, in terms of the fact that she's 3 hours ahead of us, so if we're starting at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, it's going on for 11 o'clock for her. She's probably already tired. Mike was definitely worried. I think we were worried for Mike in terms of whether he'll be able to keep up or come up with the answers, but it'll all be in good fun, and it's just nice to, I've said this before, just nice to have that element of humour under these circumstances and be able to keep just sort of checked in with people, and checked in with people more than we would normally. I certainly wouldn't be playing games weekly with these people or having people round weekly. We always try and keep in touch, and it was mostly in regard, or mostly over the football season. We had already mentioned that this year we were going to try and do sort of a monthly movie or games night in the run-up to sort of football season starting again, just to maintain that contact, but this has probably worked out even better. Maybe we can carry this on even once we're all back and allowed to see each other. Nobody has to see each other anymore. It's like we can just do it virtually. Virtually? Okay, so there's that. Gizmo, White Cat, has been back at the vet, so second time now. Had to call up for another telephone appointment and just say, well, I submitted photos and they called me to have a chat, saying that I needed to pay for another telephone appointment, even though it was an ongoing issue. I felt a little bit ripped off by that. But he then needed to have, the vet called me, we had a conversation, the vet decided that probably needed to actually see him to understand what the issue was, which made me feel a lot better knowing that someone was going to take a look at his eye rather than relying on me trying to describe what I think I could see. So Cookie took him to the vet on Friday, and they've looked at his eye, they've decided to put him on a course of steroids, drops into his eye, see if that improves the issue. So he's got this sort of, like, across his left eye there's a little diagonal sort of, there's a blur over his pupil. I don't know if it's on the outside, on the inside, or what, but there is then a blood vessel going from the corner of his eye towards this scuff and then out the top of his eye. So they put him on these steroid drops, said that this is sort of like a last-ditch attempt to make it better. If this doesn't do the job, they don't really know what it is, and he will have to go back in and have his eyeball scraped so that they can then send it off for testing, which sounds a rather unpleasant experience for him. No idea how much that could potentially cost either, but hopefully it won't come to that. These steroids have made a difference. The blood vessel seems to have that's certainly less visible, and even the scuff on his eye seems to be getting smaller. But it certainly hasn't gone, and it has now been 7 days of treatment. So, in fact, they were supposed to call me back yesterday. They were supposed to call after a week to check on him, and nobody did. So I wonder if they'll call early next week and see what they suggest. I don't particularly want him to go through the eye scraping thing unnecessarily. It's not something I would want to go through, and it's not bothering him, so I will let the vet know that and see what they suggest. I don't want to leave it at the same time and it potentially get worse, so I'll probably go with the vet's choice on that, and see what they suggest. So that was an experience for him. He got a trip out and go in the car. He hates the car, so cried all the way there and back. What else did we do? Oh, and then we've had a call this week with a couple of our... There's moths again. A couple of our... mine and the baby's friends. So I had some friends from work that had babies very similar times to me, and then we've sort of kept connected, and we've had a couple of video calls, just see how everybody's doing, check in with the babies, have a look at them, see how they're progressing and growing, sort of comparing notes in terms of how we're all getting on and that progress. One of the babies is 5 days younger than so it's always interesting just to see how they're comparing to each other, what they're doing, who's walking, who's not, how many teeth they've got, sort of how they're sleeping, what they're eating, all those kinds of things. So that was nice just to check in and see how the mummies are doing as well. During these times, we're all managing without nurseries or other childcare forms. Speaking of which, we had an email from nursery the week before last just saying that they were intending to open again on the 1st of June and checking whether we would be sending the baby back if they were in a position to open. So we had only 2 days to respond on that and let them know what we were thinking, sort of difficult decisions around that, what's best to do. That was a bit of pressure that evening. It was quite upsetting to think about it, thinking that nursery is probably the best thing for her to sort of start socialising again and getting her back out of this very tiny bubble of just spending time with mummy and daddy, but then also recognising the fact that we've got used to her being here every day and then having to have that time away from her. Very emotional sort of decision to be made there. But yeah, that's it. That's the end of the list. End of the podcast. As I say, I should be back again in just 5 days. So not sure whether that will quite happen to plan and what I will have to talk about. Might have to be a short podcast just to try and keep me back in or get me back in line, because I don't want them to keep drifting and then you have sort of a 5 days worth of podcast and then 10 days worth of podcast. It's not good. It's not good, is it? Doesn't keep the flow going. I don't feel like you're on my journey if you're out of sync time-wise. But if anybody's had this running experience, they're struggling with it, trying to get back into that routine or started it from scratch, whatever, let me know. Tell me how you got through it and sort of try and share your story with me to give me that incentive to keep going. Because I'm just struggling. And maybe I just have to recognise that I won't ever get back into that place of running that I was in before. I don't want that to be the answer, so I need your help to continue my journey. Thank you. Okay, right, I'm gonna call it a day. I'll switch it off and I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.
So there we go. What do you think to that? Another one done. Another one in the bag. Getting to be a bit of a habit this. You know what they say? Kiss a nun once, kiss a nun twice, but don't get into the habit. YouTube watchers, make sure YouTube subscribers like, share, comment, Share with your friends. Get them to do the same. You know how it goes by now. I want to see all those subscribers going up. Everybody jump over to thecookiecast.com. Check us out over there. Send us some love. There's many ways you can send love. You can send it social media. You can send it email, in the post. Yeah. So there we go. That's that for this one. And until next time, I'm saying bye. I'm going to see you then. Bye-bye.